All right, we are live here, August 15th, 2026. This is the Ips Deprogram Saturn Day edition, which we refer to here as Infinite Plane Saturn Day in recognition of the fact that the power elite who control our history maintain some kind of esoteric subtext, making it very clear that they venerate Saturn, whatever that represents, likely control over time, space, restriction, etc., as their main, I won't say main deity, but it does seem to be the, I guess you would say, the god of this world, the god of the material realm. But it'd be oversimplifying it to say that they worship Saturn or they worship Satan, which is not true. Satan's not even all that worshipable. They're very much, I think, pantheistic, if anything. And that's just judging off of the subtext. We've been analyzing the various rituals, the rites, the pageantry, and it's just all very pagan. But Saturn has a very specific place in this whole mess. We often see Saturn representing or represented in the movies like the Strangers in Dark City, the Design Authority, and that's from Megalopolis, Agents in the Matrix, Christoph in the Truman Show, and all of the liars that kept Truman boxed in. They're all part of the Saturnian matrix, which is, again, time, space control, mostly time, and of course matter. Saturn being associated with black matter, the various symbols that we see, like the cube, for example, is a very common one. The hexagon, hexagram, all of these pertain to the same basic idea. So when we say Saturn Day, that's actually what we are referring to, because ultimately it's time control. Are you living in history? I used to hear, I think it was mostly like a feminist thing. It's his story, which it's mostly true, but they say his as though it's referring to like the patriarchy. But when I say his story, it's like, no, it's Big Brother. It's bigger than that. But if you recognize that our history is written in advance, and well, rather, if you don't recognize it, you're living in that simulation. You're living in history. But if you recognize it and you can delineate between the real timeline and the meta script, if you're off-world stage, you aren't really living in history. I mean, you're observing it objectively, but you're like a non-participant. The major historic events that have shaped our worldview have predominantly been fake. And if there's an exception, let me know. Please, I want to be the first to know. Tell me what was real. I used to have people say, well, all the school shootings can't be fake. Well, I didn't say all, but I'm asking, well, which one is real? Or I've been having this back and forth dialogue with JLB, and he's like, are you saying that every time some major TV show or a movie aligns with something in real life, that it's intentional? And my response was, well, show me an example of a major event, like a global news event, that happened to coincide with Netflix exactly. That was actually a real event. Because our interpretation here, and this is based on empirical research and observations, is that the alignment between the entertainment and the historic event are built into the same, because basically it's a reinforcement. It's like an advertisement. It's like foreshadowing. It's a literary technique in a lot of ways. It's a propaganda strategy. But the correlation between entertainment and events is an indicator the event is fake, because entertainment does not foreshadow real things. That's why he has not been able to say, well, this event here was perfectly matched by Netflix and Hulu and a few video games, and it was 100% real. No, you can't actually find. Well, you can, I'm sure, if you look. But I'm asking if you can. If you can, let me know. Find me a real event that has predictive programming. Find me a real event that has concurrent programming. I'll be the first to admit that our model is wrong if you can find such a thing, because our model is falsifiable. All you would have to do is provide some kind of explanation for what we're pointing out. And it's easy to ignore it. One of our resident, I would say one of our resident normies that we keep around in the Discord server for the sole purpose of studying his predictable opinions, but we are reverse engineering his opinions, that would be Lloyd. And, he's still debating. He's like, well, I don't know. I'm on the fence. Maybe Charlie's dead. Maybe he's not. And, I don't think you can be on the fence about such a thing. It's like you can't be on the fence. Is the sky blue or isn't it? No, there are some things that are just observably so. And denialism is really their last position. Let's just deny that concurrent programming matters. Once you acknowledge the existence of it, you have to consider the implications. And the safe thing to do is to notice predictive programming and call people crazy for noticing it. That's the safe position. But the instant you talk about concurrent programming and you admit that you're aware of it, well, then you can be questioned as to, well, what do you think about it? Does it have any deeper implications? Which it does. And if you haven't considered those, it's probably because it hasn't been brought up to your attention. The significance of it is the synchronization of manufactured events and entertainment necessitates advanced planning. And, we've been mocked for saying that events are planned in advance. Well, look at any major psyop and the drills that accompany it and tell me it wasn't planned in advance, which by definition means that that historic event was scripted. It was prefabricated. And when the event becomes a permanent aspect of our worldview, it becomes part of our history, then we consider it to be it's like a fixture. It's like a brick, in this big edifice. But it's a permanent fixture. So we're also not just talking about hoaxes or PR stunts. We're talking actually about historic events that become part of our collective consensus agreed upon version of things. It goes into the history books, and subsequent events build on that. So if you're not aware of Metascript, then your interpretation of the world day to day as broadcast to you by the news media and entertainment, the collective picture, your framing of it is going to be skewed in favor of fake stuff, because the fake is what dominates the news cycles. And to the extent that your existence is framed by fake more than real, you are in a simulation. Like when you have a mass casualty simulation drill and you're participating in it, you could say that, yeah, I'm in a simulation. It's like if you're in a play, I'm in a play. You recognize that it's not real. And what has happened is we have been collectively drawn into many simulations. And it's not just that we see them on TV or we passively notice them as headlines, but we're actually provoked and coerced into participating in them. And it's very difficult to opt out. You can just have no opinions. That's one way. But there are other times where you can't really opt out. And not to mention the fact that if you're participating in the political system, you're participating in a system that doesn't acknowledge the fake stuff as being fake, but treats it all as real, as do all of the politicians. Your political leadership consists of auto-believers, non-skeptics, world stagers. They're all in the Truman Show. Zero exceptions. For a long time, there was a large body of truthers who thought Trump was an exception. Oh, he's not doing the psyops. He's fighting the deep state. And we're like, well, why doesn't he tell us? Why doesn't he expose it? Because the deep state will give him a 25th Amendment. They'll say he's crazy. But he knows that we know, and we know that he knows, and that's good enough. It's 5D chess. trust the plan, bro. And we lost a lot of good media skeptics when QAnon came about because they fell for the hopium that Trump was going to save them. Then January 6th happens, and a lot of them said, well, the deep state set him up. So they still had him as their guy on the inside. He's not a politician, he's just a businessman, whatever that means. That was their refrain. And he's a businessman who's going to upset the system. But post Butler, Pennsylvania, you have no excuse for thinking that he's anything more than a lifetime crisis actor, which is fundamentally what it is. Now, another point I've been making is that if you follow controlled opposition, you are controlled opposition. If you are someone who is crying for a fake dead person, or if not crying, maybe mourning or advocating for a fake dead person, you are technically a crisis actor. So you see this flyer on the screen, it says, Crisis Actors for Charlie Kirk. If you are on Team Candace Owens, you're a crisis actor. If you're on Team Andrew Wilson, you're a crisis actor. I watched that debate, and most of you here already know the whole story. The debate is a controlled debate because both sides agree on the fundamental point that he's dead. That's what you would call a controlled dialectic. In fact, I put out a blog post on this I want to go over. So here you have Erica Kirk and Andrew Wilson as a two-headed monster in one suit. And this describes the debate. And as I predicted, the truthers are going to say Candace won, even though it was just incessant babbling, word salad, and filibustering. And the mainstream Republicans will say that Andrew Wilson won. They're both doing it. And it's because neither side is objective. And both of them are crisis actors. So, to be clear, I don't have an attachment to either one of these bread and circus clowns. But by definition, a controlled dialectic is a structured method where opposing ideas, the thesis, antithesis, are restricted and managed to guide outcomes toward a desired synthesis. In this case, they both agree Charlie's dead. Everything after that is building on a fake, false premise. So now this is how they engineer consensus. So everybody who was watching this debate, whether for Owens or for Wilson, were basically falling for the control dialectic. And whenever you see the black and white checker floor, the Masonic tile, the trestle board, you see the black and white, it's like a chess game. And it is a game. The world stage is an alternate reality game. And if you're on the black or if you're on the white, you're a pawn in the game. And in this case, you're looking at a controlled dialectic, black and white. So everybody watching this thing were participating in an alternate reality game. And I don't know how many knew about this or how many can see through it. Aside from us, to be quite honest, there really aren't any. It's a very small group of us who aren't buying the false premise that he actually died. Kirk was a psyop actor. He was not a Christian. He was not a good guy fighting the bad guys. He wasn't a traditionalist. No, Charlie Kirk is an actor from day one. His entire act was phony. And he's not a martyr. And you could say the same thing to, with Candace Owens or Erica Kirk. We're looking at actors, provocateurs. It's like a reality TV show. And that's not an oversimplification. We can prove it. And one of the things that is irrefutable as far as evidence is concurrent programming. And that's why I talk about it. And that's the one thing that the truthers won't touch. And a good example is Snake Eyes. One of the biggest stories post Charlie Kirk was the movie Snake Eyes and how it eerily foreshadowed the whole event. But not one of the large channels that talked about Snake Eyes like everyone else did mentioned any of the other examples of more recent bits of correlations, of concurrent programming. They didn't touch it. We had the script for Erica Kirk the day after Charlie died. We knew about the fake crying taking over the organization, that she'd be accused of conspiring to kill her husband. We knew that before she took over TPUSA. And we're not psychic. We knew this because we saw this what I call the meta script. So the meta script is what I refer to as the collection of scripts that make our fake timeline. And these are the scripts, the scripted events and people that are prefabricated and are inserted into our daily lives through the news every day. The fake stuff, the simulations, the simulation actors. So you could say that Charlie was a simulation actor. Candace is a simulation actor. She's not a grifter making money off her dead friend. She's not a truther trying to defend her dead friend. No, she's an actress and she knows that he's not dead. That's how deep the deception goes. It is actually that deep. And truthers have no clue how duped they are. As Mark Twain said, it's easier to fool a man than convince him he's been fooled. They think, no, we're not fooled by mainstream, we're alternative. And they think they figured it out. It's like, no, you went into a deeper level of programming. And there's pretty much no way out for many of these. So Candace's performance was not compelling intellectual discourse. It was brainless blabbering and time-wasting filibustering. And what I despise about conspiracy theorists is their dishonesty. Most of them, and it's strategic, they all do it. They all say, oh, we're just asking questions. Well, the just asking questions crowd are offering loaded questions. It's a way of offering a premise without having to be accountable for it. Without being, it's like, I want to maintain plausible deniability. I want to be able to say whatever with zero consequence. So you can make a very outlandish claim, and then when it's contradicted, instead of losing credibility, you can say, well, I'm just asking questions. I'm open-minded, which is not actually true. And they all know that it's a strategy. They know they're doing it. Okay, so now something else. There was a lot of conversation about the rounds, the bullets, and everything that we saw with JFK, we're seeing all over again. It's called fake. They want you debating as to whether or not a 30-06 would necessarily have shot through the guy's neck or not. They don't want you questioning the premise that he was even shot. And the best explanation thus far is the squib. And the only way they can cover that up is saying he had some kind of a explosive mic that caused his shirt to puff up. But it doesn't explain, if you look at the side profile shots, why his neck inflates like a balloon. Like they don't see that, or they don't recognize the significance of that. But they want you to debate about the details. Like you could make the argument that the round would not have been expected to have gone through him because it was a soft tip and it was meant to transfer more shock. You know, like it's basically stopping power. And if the bullet goes all the way through, it loses a lot of that. It wastes a lot of that. So there's different arguments that I hear. If you're mainstream Republican, you're going to say that suffices. The bullet obviously shattered. If you're woke right, you're going to say that's not possible. It had to be the exploding mic, because both sides are gun experts. And I've done some research on it, and if you run this by somebody who's woke right, they're going to say it's not true. So I was reading about something called overpenetration. It says bullets passing completely through the target and exiting creates a high risk of hitting unintended targets, risk to bystanders, loss of stopping power. And so that's kind of the argument that the prosecution has used, that Tyler shot him and that the bullet didn't go through. But the other side will say, no, the bullet would have gone through. His neck had to have been special and super strong. It had to have been a miracle. It has no mundane explanation. But I try not to get into the weeds with all these self-professed, all of a sudden gun experts and ammunition experts. Because the point of it is, as long as you're fighting over that, you're not talking about the premise, which is false. I call that fake. Like if you can get people to debate whether or not there's actually a monolith on the moon of Mars, well, you got them to accept the premise that Mars is something we've landed on. Mars is a possible future destination. It lends credence to NASA's general story. So I try to avoid the fake because it gets you to buy into the story. It's kind of like this idea, I think I've heard this somewhere having to do with cars. A car salesman will say, if you can get them to start, like as in the people you're selling to, husband and wife or something, you get them to start debating over the color of the car or what features they're going to get. Well, they've already internalized that they're going to buy the car. And so if they get you into the weeds here, you've bought the whole story. So that's really the intention. But it's an engineered conspiracy theory. That's my point. We're not looking at real investigators. Do we really think that these 200 some thousand followers, live stream followers on these Candace Owens streams are investigating a homicide? Like they think, oh yeah, I'm going to get on my Twitter, I'm going to go online and I'm going to solve that murder. No, it's a matter of building a community around this alternative spin. And that's what Candace's job is. She's not making money from t-shirts and swag and donations and super chats. Her payment comes from the PSYOP entertainment complex. Big Brother pays her directly. And her job is to build this community. It's a government-created counterculture. So now, the next part, conspiracy theorists are not skeptics. That's another point too. They're not skeptical. They're actually biased against the mainstream. That's not the same as being skeptical. They're selectively skeptical, but not even then. They're actually just incredulous. They're very shallow in their takes and highly emotional, which is by design. Like when you think about people who watch World Wrestling Entertainment, do you think of them as intellectual? Like they're watching wrestling, and do you think they're analyzing it like as reasonable? I guess critics, are they actually like thinking it through and going into the nuance? And no, they're not sitting there skeptically observing it. They would say, well, that looks fake, that looks fake. No, they actually, when they watch it, they're into it. They're just going with the show. They get into it emotionally. They're not thinking about whether it's real or not. Key word is, or the key phrase here is, they're not thinking about it. They're just reacting. That's how entertainment is. You don't want to over-intellectualize it, over-analyze it. Well, when it comes to media consumption, that's what we get from people. We get this emotional engagement rather than actual skeptical engagement. A huge difference. So Owens is establishment controlled. That's another bit of cover that conspiracy theorists use. They pretend to be anti-establishment. They pretend to be the default side of truth. Like, oh, they're liars, we're truthers. And so you're supposed to believe that Candace Owens is not mainstream. Oh no, she and Tucker, they're not mainstream because they got kicked off their big platforms. That's the very definition of controlled opposition. They supply leadership to those below by making it look like these people serve them or work for them. But no, these are just as much establishment controlled as anybody in the mainstream side. So Owens and Candace are on the same team. And conspiracy theorists have been walked into a trap. And she has effectively Pied Pipered a new generation of controlled opposition, establishment-friendly conspiracy theorists into existence. And I'm looking at the scale of this operation, and I would suggest here that the Candace Owens cult is as big as QAnon. And it's basically the same thing. What they do is they build this controlled opposition, alternative media, and then they politicize it. They get them from being red pill into like woke right politics, J pill politics. So red pill has always been a euphemism anyway. So you buy into these conspiracy theories and you're like, oh, it must be the Illuminati, it must be the reptilians. And you have this entire worldview that explains things. And then later they're like, no, it's not just the reptilians, it's the Rothschilds. So they use the X-Files science fiction style conspiracies to get people into politics. So QAnon did the same thing. It went from adrenochrome satanic rituals and cannibals running the world to let's vote for Donald Trump and let's get involved in politics because we can fight the deep state. It's just very clever because there's no conspiracy theories that are apolitical. And the thing about politics is that politics is built on world stage theater. Like if you're still voting, then you don't know about the world stage. You don't know about media fakery, or you haven't considered the implications. I remember thinking this back when I watched all these QAnon people falling for Trump again, and I was thinking, why are you voting for somebody who plays along with all the fake events? Why would you think that they somehow serve your interests if they're reinforcing the psychological warfare? Okay, so now both sides take part in the pro versus anti dialectic. So again, pro versus anti, black and white dialectic. And what do you get out of that? Well, you have two sides advancing the synthesis, which is the only thing that matters. They don't care about your opinions. In fact, the conspiracy theorists are part of the ecosystem. They need them to exist. It's that triangulation that they built into this thing. And I have every expectation that the Charlie Kirk conspiracy theories are going to persist for decades. This is the same thing as JFK. The conspiracy theory subculture needed to be rebooted for this generation. And I don't think Alex Jones has the audience, the clout. Nobody cares what he has to say. I mean, he's a parody of extremism. You know, I think it's really bizarre that The Onion bought his website and they're doing parody of him. It's like you're doing parody of a parody. It's actually not working. But those of us who aren't part of their controlled dialectic don't have a platform. We don't have a voice. In fact, we're ignored consistently, and we're right. We are actually correct in stating that Charlie Kirk's not dead and he was always an actor. But that perspective gets zero engagement from people like Stu Peters or Owens or any of these big channels. Now, another point too is that these individuals that we refer to, these influencers, they're not grifters, they're programmers. They're here to program your minds. That's what their job is. Alt media programmers are the same as mainstream programmers. So does it make sense to choose between an enemy or a friend who's actually an enemy? No, it's a distinction without a real difference. I'm not going to follow someone because they're pretending to be on my side. And anybody supporting Candace is being a fool. You're being played for a fool. She's a programmer, a high-level programmer. Very good at what she does. She's fooled the world. I mean, that's what we're really talking about here. We're talking about deception. And for some reason, truthers think they are above deception. And if you can't admit that you've been deceived or that you've been wrong, you're going to remain in their mind control zone. You're not going to get out of their controlled left-right false paradigm. And, you know, I was controlled. I fully admit I was mind controlled. I didn't know real from fake. I bought into everything. I mean, who here did not? And the truthers have settled in their perspectives as though they have the default correct position. It's just self-righteousness at this point. But the debate was a excruciating ordeal. It was unfun, rather boring and unimpressive. But it's over. And each side thinks the other guy won. So that's the other part of it. It's like, it's not a real debate because they didn't actually do anything other than get into semantics. And at the end of it, nobody walked away with any clarity. Nobody switched sides. And those who were on Team Andrew say Andrew won. And those who were on Team Candace say the same thing. So it's over. And we're getting up close to the first anniversary. So it's far from over. Again, this is going to be a decades-long story. It's never going to end. It's a myth. They manufactured this martyr, and now I see him being floated around as he would have been president. Oh yeah, he was our future president, and they took him out. So now, on a related note, Luigi Mangione confessed to killing the CEO. He confessed, he said, on the morning of December 4th, 2024, I shot Mr. Thompson in Manhattan and he died. So I'm thinking, well, maybe Candace fans can now work on getting Luigi free. And they can start talking about how he didn't do it. And they can try to get him out of it. Because that's how absurd it actually is. Because I don't believe the story's real. But knowing that, looking at how they're responding to it, it's still just ridiculous. They're looking at it like, Tyler couldn't have done it. And then Tyler's like, yeah, I did it. Like, oh, he didn't do it. Well, how do you explain that? Or they'll say Tyler couldn't have done it because that bullet wasn't, the gun that he used wasn't the gun. Well, then, if he didn't do it, if they had a second shooter, why do they need him there? Like, the whole thing is just not making a lot of sense to me right now. Why would you need somebody to pretend to be the shooter if you have a different shooter? Why wouldn't you just have the other shooter be the real shooter? It's getting really confusing. Why wouldn't you have had Tyler closer up to not leave so many questions? You know, why would you have the conspiracy that you do to take this guy out, have it made in such a way that it creates this entire conspiracy theory ecosystem? Well, it's because they want that to occur. Keep in mind, Squib Team 6, the guys who were around Charlie, who were making hand gestures and pretending to detonate a bomb and all the things that they were doing that. It was choreographed, but they were doing that to create conspiracy theories. This is what they do. I was talking to Gemma yesterday, and we both agree that the Building 7 glitch. Do you remember on 9/11 when they were saying something about Building 7 collapsing and it hadn't collapsed yet? And that was, for a lot of people, an insight. And they would say, well, what about Building 7? So Building 7 was like, in a way, it was the glitch in the matrix you needed to call the whole thing fake. And that worked for many years. But looking back, was that an error? Or was that intentional? What we call truth or bait. And that's where I would go with this. I would say, no, they know there's going to be skeptics, or rather people who are just incredulous about mainstream. So what they've done is they've manufactured a plot line for them. So these aren't glitches, they're not mistakes, they're not really bad at psyops. In fact, they're good at it. They have 8 billion people as a captive audience. It's flawless. It's actually perfect. And you can see here what they've done, though, is that in order to account for those who don't go with mainstream, they just created this alt. And the people in alt media, the people who fall for it, are dupes, which is just putting it nicely. So here is Patrick Bet David posing with the two sides. He says, the people want today. Whatever side you're on, respect to Candace Owens and Andrew Wilson for stepping into the arena and having the debate. It's not easy. What do you mean it's not easy? What's hard about it? How is this difficult? I'm not challenged by it. He says, agree or disagree, give credit to both for showing up and putting their ideas on the line. And my response was, screw them both and you too. You're all shills and Charlie's not dead. I don't expect a response, and I don't make these types of posts to get response. The reason why I am engaging with the other side is to make it a matter of record and to make statements that other people in the know can react to. Because what we're doing is we are butting heads. The off-world stage perspective needs to confront the world stagers now on every single talking point. And I am getting more engagement all the time by people who are just blatantly brainwashed. One of the main brainwashing tools they have is the political horseshoe. And the political horseshoe theory has been implemented into the model itself at the extremes. And they kind of conceal it, or at least they used to try to conceal it. And it's becoming clearer now that both sides have a woke aspect. The people who are woke right hate that term. They don't like the insinuation. But the way they hide it is they pretend like the word woke means left. It's all word games. So, for example, Elon Musk will say, we got to stop the woke mind virus, as though there's only one. And by woke mind virus, he means the left. So he lets the woke right mind virus take over X. Very clever. So briefly, the woke left is handed a bunch of white scapegoats. Whiteness, we got to decenter whiteness. Whiteness is, or white racism is systemic, it's oppressive, and it censors by marginalizing Black, Indigenous, people of color, females. So you have like this idea of an oppressor that they have woken up to, and that's what they're fighting. The protests we saw earlier this year in the Twin Cities against ICE kind of show how this works, because the whites on the left, who would be oppressors, but since they're on the left, what do? They check their privilege and they fight on behalf of the oppressed. And that was the rationale in that scripted psyop of having Alex Preddy and Renee Good dying for the immigrants. They were showing that, hey, they're privileged, they have all the power, but they're checking their privilege and they're going down for the cause. Luigi Mangione, he was rich and privileged. He went down for the cause. That's a storyline. In Wicked for Good, I call it Wicked for Renee Good, the talking animals are the immigrants being deported from Oz. The Wizard of Oz is Donald Trump. The Wicked Witch, played by a Black woman, is Antifa, and she's fighting to free the animals from the oppressor. And the main part of the movie is she has to convince the privileged good witch to renounce her privilege because she has the power to stop the wizard. So the whole movie is essentially about the witch getting the powerful good witch and the prince to renounce their privilege and fight for the talking animals. So this is basically the woke left script on full display. And that's why they had to have the person. It's interesting. How many times did you see actual immigrants dying or being mistreated and you don't have the riots? And then a white woman dies and now there's huge riots. And then what did you see too? There was a lot of, and this was like, if you watch the Twin Cities riots and all, that happened last spring or winter, you did see a lot of like white liberal women in their cars talking about fighting ICE. So again, that's all just part of their narrative, and it's all being reinforced. They do these psyops to reinforce these basic narratives. The woke right are handed Jewish scapegoats. So it's critical race theory versus critical Israel theory every single time. And each claims to be oppressed. So the far right believe that they're being genocided. They are convinced that they are being oppressed and that they're being censored. And each side claims that the other side is censoring them. So the left will say, we're censored because we're marginalized and the systemic oppression keeps our voices out, so we're suppressed. And then the right will say we're suppressed or censored because we can't say the N-word and we can't deny the Holocaust on Twitter and YouTube. So each side claims the other side is oppressing him. It's the oppressed versus the oppressed. And that's what wokeism is. Same machinery, different scapegoat. And I think it's important to call out woke rightism because it's a position that is in the world stage, and it actually is the container in which all of the conspiracy theories actually fit. And conspiracy theorists, whether they know it or not, are technically woke right. All of them. You wouldn't think of it because they euphemize it so well. But, we have to, and this is just Confucius says, the beginning of wisdom is the ability to call things by their right names. And what I aim to do here is to call things by their right names. I'm going to call a crisis actor, a psyop, a psyop. And again, if you are mourning for Charlie Kirk, you are a crisis actor. Okay, and let me go through your comments, then we'll continue here. We have another Chad shooter. Chad's gone wild. We had that person shooting up the In-N-Out. His name was Chad Williams. And then we got his clone here, Chad Hickman. And he shot 5 people in Michigan. A series of shootings in Michigan left 5 people plus the suspect dead on Friday. Same story. Both the shooters are dead. But again, Twin Cities, or Twin Falls it was. Interesting though, they do look the same. And we've seen this before. I'm waiting for this guy's incel festo. He's got to have a manifesto. The name is too perfect. It's really close to Chud. And by the way, Chud the Builder is in the news again. It's just, there's this caricature. So Chud, again, it refers to cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. It's some bad movie from the 80s. But it's been used to describe basement dwellers or terminally online 4chan S posters and incels, which is an apt description. And I'm thinking these two fit that, but I haven't seen their manifestos. I was kind of wondering about that. I was asking the FBI, I was like, what, did you not pay premium on your chat GPT? Where's the manifesto? It should have been out by now. And if you're in the chat, by the way, say hello. I'll hand out wrenches. We are joined here by Flozik, a Newful, Water Robbie, Clockwork 113, Armin Ree, Suzette Ann, Sync Floyd. It says world building. Yep. Suzette Ann says digital panopticon building. Yeah, I see people getting mad at flock cameras. Like, oh, I don't want to be surveilled. Meanwhile, everywhere you go, your phone is giving away your location. You're self-surveilling. Social media is tantamount to a mind-reading device. You even take your self-surveillance equipment with you into your bedroom. You take it wherever you go. You're doing your morning routine. You're shaving. You're having breakfast. You always have your camera on you. Like we have been so complicit in self-surveillance. Privacy doesn't exist. So it's kind of a joke when I see people super worried about flock cameras. Oh, I don't want them to know. Like, what do you think this is? You're in the Truman Show. You live under surveillance. Which is a brilliant move. They sold you on this idea that, hey, if we don't keep government power in check, they're going to surveil us. And it's like 1984. Knowing that we would resist that and we would destroy the cameras and we wouldn't want 1984, they sold it to us in the culture. They sold self-surveillance and so through social media, the commodification of your privacy. Like your privacy is only worth something if you, well, actually its only value is in its ability to get you attention. Like privacy is essentially a farce these days. And there has been this progression. And I think they're getting us ready. I think that it's not that they get us ready, it's that they sell us on something so we don't resist it, is my point. So nobody's resisting the mass self-surveillance. So you can't pretend like you're a freedom fighter against surveillance in principle by fighting flock cameras. But post 9/11, we gave Big Brother permission to palpate us, to pat us down, to look beneath our clothes when we go flying somewhere. The body scanners and all that. So we already gave in when it comes to, okay, you can see beneath my clothes, that's okay. Got to be safe. Post-COVID, the conversation is, and during it, the conversation really became, can we allow you to travel without knowing what's in your blood? It's not just going beneath your skins looking for bombs. We got to go, we can't just like look in your pockets or your shoes. We got to go into your blood. What are you possibly spreading? So we've accepted the premise to a large degree. And it's just a matter of time, until it's just normalized where no, you have to have all of your updated shots to go anywhere. And then the following step, and this is the one they're working on now, is we got to check what's on your browser history, what's on your mind. Are you a super spreader of certain memes? And these, basically disease X, mind viruses. All right, let's see here. How do we know these Indonesian earthquakes are actually happening? Indonesia was in on the Boxing Day tsunami. That was sus, says Ryler05. A Newful says, now earthquake is the new trend in Trutherville. I follow some truther channels to see what worldview they feed their livestock. No, we've talked about this. Are earthquakes fakeable? Anything they can fake in the movies, they can fake on the news. That's actually axiomatic. They do simulations and drills all the time. But the question is, are these ones fake? And I don't know. I'm saying I don't know. They're fakeable, yes. I would need more information. Eddie Ben Wanderer says Candace Owens has to have an editor. She has to. She mispronounces too many words, so she's reading off a screen, and I mean, some of the words she mispronounces, I think, are clearly because she just hasn't spoken them. She's unfamiliar with them, or hasn't used them in context. She couldn't pronounce monstrous, or architecture, or kerfuffle. It's just, there's so many words, and this is like been pointed out many times, and I'm not knocking her. I'm just saying she's not writing her own speeches. Cruderfest says, my father was a mason. He put black and white checker floors in the kitchen. Said he's doing what he's told. I somehow doubt that. I was a mason, and I was never told to do anything to my floors. Northern Girl, happy Saturday. Thank you for joining. Eddie Ben Wanderer says, John Wilkes Booth, stage actor, murders president, sounds like early propaganda. Yeah. In fact, Abraham Lincoln has been inducted into the Wrestling Hall of Fame. So he and Donald Trump have that in common. But yeah, I would suggest that that one is fake and scripted just based on the parallels between it and the JFK assassination. It's very meta-scripty. And it's been widely noticed. People say, oh, look at these crazy coincidences between JFK and Lincoln. Yeah, that's scripting. Eddie says it takes intelligence to sell an act, but memory to memorize lines. Agreed. Joined by Adu and Garang. Eddie says, enjoying the stream, very informant. Oh yeah, this is basically what we're doing here is we're doing media deconstruction, not conspiracy theory. And it's more philosophical than anything. He says, my neural networks in my brain feel good. And there's a really great speech. It's a TED Talk by Eric Bischoff, who spent 30 years in the WWE. And he talks about how they don't want people to intellectualize the fights, and so they create these polarizing stories. And that when he got out of wrestling, he saw that, wait, they do this in politics now. They do this in the news. It's all kayfabe. Garang says, is there something deeper going on with Candace, like all the esoteric things connected to the 60s counterculture or the Tupac saga? Or is it just money to make a deal with Agent Smith? Well, she started off as an actress, and there's a pretty credible, I don't know if it's a rumor. I've seen what's suggested to be evidence. Apparently her father is listed somewhere as having done some kind of security work at Sandy Hook Elementary. So she might be second generation PSYOP entertainment complex. Ryler says they're thespians, Tim. Respect the craft. You know, it's funny you say that because I was trying to get ChatGPT to make my meme that says crisis actors for Charlie Kirk, and ChatGPT wouldn't do it. So I changed it to crisis thespians. But I didn't like it, so I went to Grok. Yeah, what's with the Archaics and David Icke thing? I don't like Archaics' channel very much. I mean, just because I find him very suspect. Not just because of the whole thing that he did years ago, to that poor woman, that whole situation is just awful. Just because he's probably a psychopath. That's not my only reason, but I just find it questionable that you have these big channels and influencers in Trutherville who have very dark histories. It's just, there's something about it I've learned not to trust. Like, if you didn't know, this channel has been around the whole flat earth topic and related conspiracies for a long time. And many of the big channels in these areas are just straight up offenders. It's really bad. It's really strange to look at it from the outside. You're like, wait, what are the odds that you can hold a conference for some oddball conspiracy theory and 7 out of 10 of the keynote speakers should have already been wood chippered? It doesn't make sense. I did see some drama, but I missed it. Yeah, and Nufel, when I said the talking animals are the immigrants, I'm not even joking. You got to watch Wicked and Wicked for Good to see it. Because at the time that Wicked for Good came out, it was, the ICE protests had started, but the Antifa weren't yet interrupting. So if you remember, the ICE agents would show up, and then Antifa would show up and break it up and try to free the immigrants. So if you watch Wicked 2, it starts where the Wizard of Oz, aka Trump, his men are grabbing the talking animals and making them work slave labor, building the brick road, and they're throwing them out of Oz. They're being deported. They're being pulled out of classrooms. They're basically being removed from Oz. So the witch interrupts. She's protesting. She shuts down their attempts to kick the animals out. And this is another element too. Someone brought this up earlier. We were talking about it in Discord. Like when you look at the woke left thing, like the paragon, like the most oppressed, like the embodiment of oppression would be black female and the oppressor white male. They have these dialectics set up. So you have the Donald Trump or the Wizard of Oz being confronted by the Wicked Witch. And again, she's defending the animals that are being deported. She's standing up against the fascist. And then she's doing so. So it's dynamic. The dynamic there is basically Antifa versus Trump. But we see this recurring pattern. Like in Civil War, they have the president on the ground and they're trying to decide who gets to kill him. And they say, no, bring in a black female soldier. So and this is not a new thing. We've just been picking up on these patterns in these movies and how they represent real people and the scenarios they set up. So it's basically the same story, but it's told in many different ways. Eddie says, cell towers know our locations. Yeah, well, to me, it just like, it seems like a manufactured outrage. I don't think it's something to get really outraged about. It's something they gave people to get mad at. It's like a fake cause. Like 5G towers were burning a few years ago. Now it's flock cameras. Suzette saying, my concern with the surveillance is the control they want to exert over us. Like mandatory digital currency with social credit scores like in Black Mirror. I just question whether these things are even dystopic. Like, is it even that bad? Like, oh no, digital currency. I don't have paper. I rarely have cash. Everything I do is bank apps. So I'm not really bothered by that. And I'm not really worried about being traced or tracked. I'm not like on the run from Big Brother. And I don't know anybody who really is. Like, oh yeah, I don't want to be seen. I'm anonymous. I'm off the grid. Oh, really? You just told the world on X. I'm pretty sure if someone's actually off the grid, you would never hear about them. You have people who actually go out and they start their farms. They do these LARP steads where they're out there, oh, I'm off the grid. I'm just surviving off of goat milk and farming. But you're online all the time and your income is primarily super chats. Like, that's not off the grid. You're completely dependent on the social media platforms allowing you to talk about how great it is to be off the grid. It's just kind of fake. But as far as privacy and the concerns about your vehicle being tracked, I'm not exactly sure where it's a detriment to how we live our lives. Riley says, Candace looks like she works for the FBI. Everything about her, the way she talks, dresses, and screams, fed. Yes, another thing too is she's not a grifter. She's not trying to like, oh, I'm going to make money live streaming on Charlie Kirk and selling a bunch of merch. The only reason these people sell merch is to provide a cover. Like Alex Jones selling all kinds of merchandise. You can't watch a 30-second clip of Alex Jones without having him pitch something to you. It's like, come on, just give me the information. It's like, here's your information. We're going to tease it, and then we're going to drop an ad. Well, the ads are there as cover because you're not supposed to know that he's getting paid from Big Brother. Joined by, let's see, Cubstar, Apocalypse Theme Park. Let's see what else. Okay. Riley says these Project Pogo guys are always in some slant on ancient history. Gnostic informant, Young, Pharaoh, Archaics, and the other guy. Suzette Ann says Archaics makes predictions for worldwide catastrophes far enough in the future so he can grift on it for a while. Far enough to be tantalizing. Right. Yeah, that's what I've kind of seen. I try to look into him, but I think he's just a truther. Like, I'm not really into truthers, to be honest. Or people who are rewriting our history and offering alternative explanations for what came before, like who built the pyramids, aliens made us, that kind of stuff. Mud flood, Tartaria. I have no time for any of that science fiction or speculation. We do a fact-based analysis of propaganda, real time as well as past propaganda. And what we have done is we have revealed the architecture of the system itself and how they fabricate history through these never-ending simulations. Fake event after fake event accumulates. Like, we've already figured it out. These other people are just they're far behind, and I would invite them to catch up, but they're not going to want to let go of their orthodoxies. Like, you're not going to get a J pillar to suddenly join on the Realville perspective. They're not going to join us and say, you know what, all that stuff is fake. Let's expose the system itself and get out of the mind control. No, because their entire identity is built around an oppressor. And if you tell them, well, hey, the group that you're blaming for killing JFK and doing 9/11 and killing Charlie Kirk, yeah, they didn't actually do any of those things because those things were fake. Well, then you take the blame off their chosen scapegoat. You take away the reason for them to feel oppressed. And if you take away their grievance and their oppression, well, then they have to be responsible. It's like, oh, wait, I can't blame Israel for being an incel. Because that's what they do. They will say, I'm an incel and I can't get anything out of life because I'm so oppressed. And it's a really nice excuse because then you can hang out with other gripers. You can commiserate over your oppression together. Suzette says, what about mandatory rationing to stop climate change when the currency is only digital? Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when I see it. Like, there's always another doomsday scenario. There's always like, oh, once they have these cell phones, they're going to track us all. I'm never going to carry a cell phone. Everyone said that. And the late night talk show hosts, they used to make fun of people with cell phones. Like, I think it was Jay Leno. He's like, yeah, there's some study that says that people using cell phones are this much more likely to get brain tumors. And then he made a joke, something along the lines of, like, who cares? But post 9/11, I think, is when everybody started picking up phones because it was a security thing. But now everybody is fully immersed 24/7, terminally online, addicted to it. And it's a drug. Media is a drug, but people are addicted to doom scrolling. Anufel says Jurassic Liar is a J pillar and he knows the fakery. So Jurassic Liars, I think he's a late comer to fakery, or he realized he had to capitulate, but he's not really. I mean, he kind of is when it comes to certain fake events, but he says that they are really going to destroy Seattle. And the Antichrist is really going to come out in a Elvis jumpsuit, and we're all going to go to hell if we don't listen to his channel. Like, no, he is not on our level as far as media deconstruction. And that's what religion does. He's an apocalyptic type. He believes the world's about to end, and it's going to happen soon because of Donald Trump and Seattle getting nuked. And he told me the reason I stopped talking to him is because I don't like people telling me to be scared or people trying to control me through fear. And he said, "Don't go to Seattle. I'm begging you. Go to the East Coast. If you go to Seattle, you will unalive yourself." And I hate that word. Just say dead. Say kill. Why do you have to use an antonym? Like you're capitulating to the censorship. And that's what is actually happening. When you let the YouTube standards change the way that you talk or change your verbiage, yeah, they control your mind. They control the language to control your mind. So I see all these words coming up, and I'm like, why can't you just say what you mean? Well, that's because we live in a simulation, and they want us as divorced from reality as can be. He's also a J pillar. So you can't say he sees the fakery because the only reason you would be a J pill person is if you believe that the Jays did all these bad things. Well, give me a list of all the bad things they did. And then let's check off the ones that are real. And you'll be like, wait a minute. Why would you be still adhering to that particular framework? Why would you be woke right? It's a world stage position. So no, he loses his auto hoaxer credentials. And calling things fake is not really all that impressive today. It's just Captain Obvious. Oh, good for you. You can call the fake thing fake. Cutting edge is putting the fake stuff into context and recognizing how long it's been going on, what it's done to our present worldview, and what it's done to the people who have internalized the fake stuff as real. Let's see. Unmitigated says, I don't personally know many people or small businesses that don't still prefer cash. Really, actually, I find it's kind of hit and miss. A lot of the self checkouts that I see around here are cash only or a card only, no cash back. But the idea of cash going away being a bad thing, I think it ties into some fiction about a cashless society, Mark of the Beast, and all that stuff. But I don't see why it's an inconvenience. Like, oh, let's just do gold and silver and trade beaver pelts. Let's just barter. Yeah, go for it. Auto Hoaxer says Gemma is a J pillar. She says her. Yeah, she and I had a conversation about that, and yeah, her views are fundamentally in that same section where like I don't scapegoat Israel for controlling the world. To me, that's just as fallacious as saying that whites control the world. And I don't buy into any oppression narratives, but it got me thinking. I'm not a nationalist. I'm not an ethno nationalist. I don't sit around wishing that America was homogenous, only white people with big borders and only Christians and only traditional families. Like, I'm not actually opposed to the melting pot, and I'm not scared of immigrants. And I don't even know why I should have any loyalty to some concept of America as it was sold to me. Like when I was in the military, I believed in the whole thing. But now I'm looking back and I'm like, wait, if this national identity is built on lies, why should I have loyalty to it? Why should I care about borders? Why should I worry about, oh no, there's immigrants? Like, why should I care? I actually don't. And it's not that I'm anti American, it's that I'm off world stage. I'm not involved in politics. I have no vested interest in saving America as the MAGA movement is. Like they think they're saving it. Saving it from what? Like who are they saving it from? Well, mainstream will say we're saving it from the political left and their attack on our trad values. The woke right will say we're saving it from Israel, who are importing people to genocide us. And like so they're both trying to defend something that's built on lies anyway. And then I don't have a religion, so I have no interest in preserving some notion that we need to have a Christian America, like Christian values. Like what are Christian values? Imposition of belief systems, bigotry, prejudice. What exactly are Christian values? You could say being good and golden rule, but it's like, no, that is not specifically a Christian thing. And it's not their defining characteristic. I mean, I drive by this church and I just see a mangled man on a execution device. Like to me, it's very archaic and barbaric. What's clever though, is the church that I drive by, they have a blood drive on Sundays. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was listening to a podcast actually about Gnosticism and archons and the extraction of our soul energy and loosh. And I was listening to this thing about blood and blood sacrifice. And so I'm listening to this podcast. I drive by the church and it says blood drive. And then I see all these people going into the church to celebrate the guy who donated all of his blood. Oh, he gave his blood to save us. And then I see this truck out here. Oh, you can go give your blood to save lives. So I think it was a clever mechanism for getting people to equate the two: self-sacrifice, loosh extraction. But when I see churches, I'm these days I'm like, okay, this is some kind of loosh harvesting. It's like a big matrix pod you go into and you feed the system. But I don't automatically grant them a moral high ground. I just don't. Like, okay, so you believe in a bunch of fairy tales. Like, maybe it's more than that. But do I need to respect religious beliefs? No. I think that the old world order and the new world order are the same thing. New Testament, News Testament. I don't think it's a different set of controllers. I just don't. Breek says, so mass immigration is neither a good thing or a bad thing to you. See, but based on that statement, is it correct for me to infer that you are a self-identified, not white nationalist, but you have to be white? Am I correct? Like white identitarianism. Like I'm thinking about white interests, my tribe. And America was never, or was it? I mean, was it ever just a pure white thing? Or was it always pluralistic, multicultural? But I would ask you, Breek, when you say, so mass immigration is either a good or a bad thing for you, what I'm asking is, are you speaking as a white person? And the reason I say so is that there was this propaganda line going around for years that was saying, we're being depopulated, we're running out of people, the birth rate's going down, we're going extinct, we're running out of people. And Elon Musk comes out and he has a sign, there's a population crisis. And both sides agree. Left says, yeah, there's a population crisis, there's too many people. The right says, there's a population crisis, we're running out of people. And then I look at the immigration numbers and I'm like, wait, if you're worried about running out of people, here they come. And then they say, no, we don't want those people. So then I'm like, oh, okay, so you weren't actually worried about running out of people. What I'm saying is, would you have a problem with immigration if you didn't have some idea of white purity being disrupted? And then do you have a primary loyalty to your phenotypes, to your race? Are you a white identitarian? And I don't mean that as a pejorative, but that's kind of built into the premise here. I'm curious as to your answer. And then national identity. Like, well, we don't want these people coming in and changing our national identity. Like, what national identity am I supposed to be defending? And why should I defend it if it's built on a bunch of lies and propaganda? Like, I really don't think any of this stuff is worth defending. I don't know if I honestly am at this point, having spoken to people with nationalism and religiosity built into their worldview, I'm thinking, yeah, I don't actually want anything to do with either of these things. I'm not fighting for America. I'm not fighting for Christianity. Like, these things aren't things I care about. I think these things are farcical. These things are part of the state-created mythos that we're given to live within. And every single time we approach an election, midterm, or we have the presidential elections, the closer we get to the election date, the more you're going to hear right-wingers chant military-age men, talking about immigrants, as though they're coming in to invade and fight. So they ramp up the xenophobia every few years, and then it passes. Suzette Ann says, Matrix Pod is a good name for churches. Yeah, well, I think that's what they are. I mean, I was raised in religion, and it was very insightful. And I remember at the time, because I was always a bad person, I guess, because I was a free thinker. And I remember researching mind control back when I was even going to catechism. And I noticed it. I would go to the church and I'd observe the lighting. Like, so over the course of the Mass, the lights would get progressively dimmer and dimmer until you get to the point where you're supposed to be on your knees and you pray and you think about how much that your Savior suffered. So you feel really bad because he died for you. It's like, oh, he died for me. This is horrible. My sins. I did bad things, so he died. Which is very contradictory, or rather, it's difficult to me. This is just like how they gaslight or use cognitive dissonance to get you to ignore something absurd. It's absurd that somebody 2,000 years ago died for me today. It doesn't make sense. Like, I don't think there's any, well, it's not meant to be logical, but that's their basic premise. So you're there and you're feeling guilty and bad. It gets really dark and everybody lines up to drink the blood and to eat the flesh. So once you've done your cannibalism, and again, don't get mad at me for saying it's ritual cannibalism. It's ritual vampirism, because that is what it is. You're celebrating this person's death by eating them. And it's not even metaphor, it's transubstantiation. When you put that communion wafer in your mouth, it's literally a chunk of skin, like transubstantiation, hocus pocus. It's actually blood you're drinking. That's not my take. That's the religion. So self-sacrifice is built into the whole thing. Pathological altruism as a supreme value. So everybody's sad. Everybody's mourning. I remember the statues were, I mean, the artwork's incredible. But it's like a tragic story. But then my point of it is the lights progressively dimmed, like on a timer at the church I went to. So you're in the darkest part, on your knees, eyes closed. Everybody gets their blood. Everybody eats the flesh. And then they turn on the music, very upbeat, lights get bright. And then you're told to stand up and offer a sign of peace to everybody. So everybody gets up and they start hugging each other and shaking hands and peace be with you. And everybody's happy all of a sudden. So there's like this whiplash. And so I'm looking at it as, and I'm like 15 years old. I'm like, oh, look, this is emotional manipulation. I used to get in trouble for sneaking novels into church. And I'd pretend like I'm reading the Bible, but I'm reading like some Conan novel or something until I got caught. I was actually looking forward to church just to read until I got caught. But my point of it is the whiplash, the darkness, the litany, then the sudden upbeat music, and everybody shaking hands. And then guess what? The collection basket passes. So everybody's happy, celebrating, throwing money into the basket. And then when you leave, they walk out the back door and the big church door is open. It's very dramatic. And it's facing the sun, the south. So Sunday morning, now you're looking, but since you've been in the dark, your eyes haven't adjusted. And so now there's this blazing white archway. And the priest is leading the way out. So you see the cross, the priest with his big garments, big dramatic display. And he's like walking out of this pure white portal, like you're going into heaven. And you go outside and it's just like your eyes are not adjusted. It's dramatic. But what I'm saying is the drama, the theatrics, it's all meant to, I think, play off of your emotions. I think it's not spiritual. I think it's manipulative. And by the way, the priest that was at my church actually is in prison, finally, after being on the run for many decades because he had been a serial abuser and had like something like 3 or 4 decades of nonstop just hurting people. And then once he got caught at the place I was at, because apparently a lot of people let him babysit, um, the church exfiltrated him, and he turned out in South Africa teaching at a elementary school. They finally caught him. So I guess one of the reasons I might have turned against religion in a way is that the one I went to venerated some guy who was a career abuser. And it's like, oh, that's not an uncommon thing. He just got caught. Somebody spray painted HIV on the rectory, and the news media reported on it, and they acted like, I don't know what that means. It was such a mess. But I mean, after that, I stopped going to church, and they had no leverage to make me go because I'm like, I'm not going. You guys had the bad judgment to have us around this thing. Anyway, I'm not just bashing religion or the Catholic Church or any of that stuff for no reason or because I have some bias against it. In principle, I am actually anti-religion in general. I'm anti-mind control. And I think religion is mind control. And if that makes me a bad person to you, then you've been programmed to see me that way, which makes you a bad person because you let some institution turn you against your fellow man. Breek says, my tribe could be the people around me regardless of color. If those same people around me are swapped with another people not from here, it dramatically changes my environment. So you're worried about the cultural shifts and non-assimilation. That's what I was wondering. And I wasn't wrong to infer that. Most of the people who are against immigrants are, online anyway, the advocates for it are seeing this as some kind of, it's the woke right position is white genocide. Like, oh, we're being blotted out. I mean, you could say it's cultural values, but which ones are you referring to? Snoopy is in here posting Jew stuff. Wake up, bro. The Jews. Go and ban that loser. What are you even doing here? Like, how did you even get here? How did you find your way here if you're a woke right activist? Like, this is not the place for you. Woke right are just as bad as woke left. Like Antifa, you look at these Antifa people and like, oh, okay, these people are insane. Well, you're the same thing. Woke right is worse than Antifa. Apocalypse says, when people migrate to a place, they aren't replacing the original population, they're adding to it. Replacement theory is bogus. Well, where I live here, this place was like this. The capital city, the oldest capital city, is actually the one that's near me, Santa Fe. But this place has always had people here, and it was made a state like 100 years ago. And the pre-existing populations weren't European. So like the idea that there was ever some kind of like it was Eric Dubé put out this video that got him kicked off YouTube, and it was called Europe for Europeans or something like that, or Hitler and the J World Order. And he said, well, all Europeans should be white, all Africans should be black, all Asians need to go to Asia. So basically, he was advocating, or the woke right advocates for, color-coded continents. Like, oh, stick to your kind and stay on your landmass. That's like their ideal. And I don't know why that's an ideal. I don't know why I should care. So no, I'm not a race warrior, and I'm not defending any archaic mind control system. And the more I think about religion and look at it, and I try not to, but the more I look at it, it's hard for me to ignore how it's an archaic mind control system that is being syncretically updated. But yeah, how do these J-pill people find their way in here? I'm looking at this guy's messages. Wake up, bro. So, okay, now that's a good one. So the woke right guy comes in here, And he says, oh, it's Israel. Wake up, bro. Oh, because I'm asleep and you're woke. You see what I mean by woke, right? The meaning of woke means that the masses are asleep to something fundamental. And when you get this truth, now you're awake and you have to evangelize it. So he's thinking, I'm awake to who controls me. I'm awake to my oppressor. Ryler says the wall along the Mexican border is to keep Americans out. Oh, keep Americans in, not Mexicans out. Yeah, I've thought about that, but they never built the wall. But that's a very good point. And speaking of walls, okay, so like the left is open borders, they're open skin. Vax me. Let the aliens in. They believe in extraterrestrials. Like, yeah, invade us, cross our borders, and penetrate our skin. And they also, so if you look at the left, their position towards government and the other is open. The right is like, no, close the borders. Aliens are demons. Give us Space Force. Protect us from extraterrestrials and terrestrial aliens. And do not vax. My skin is a border. So they're closed borders, closed skin, and closed to aliens. And the other side is open to everything. So closed, open. Open is considered, passive, receptive. And then closed would be the active. So you have like this male female coded left and right. That's why you have toxic masculinity on the right and feminism on the left. These are exaggerated positions. But left is female coded, right is male coded. But it's all code. It's all propaganda structure. And it's not a coincidence that the right is taught that aliens are demons. The further right you go, the scarier they are to you. That's why Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson claim aliens are demons. Tucker was attacked by one. And the left, no, they worship aliens. And the thing is, they will mock traditional views about angels because it's a religious thing. But they accept aliens as though it's scientific, when actually, no, it's not. It's just as much a superstition or a mystical concept. Suzette Ann says, yes, Eric Dubay lives in Thailand and now Cambodia. Yeah, Eric Dubay's like, all whites need to go to Europe and defend the homeland against the immigrants. And he's out there very multicultural, living in Thailand doing yoga and teaching martial arts. And he's married to some daughter of a general. It's like, wait, shouldn't you be in Europe, like replicating, fighting against the genocide, defending your homeland? Ryler says they're bulldozing Big Bend right now to build the wall. Finally. But no, look, I'm saying, in like recently, it just occurred to me, I have nothing to defend here. And does that sound nihilistic? Probably. Probably to people who believe in the system. But I've lost my belief in the world stage. And so why should I defend any of its institutions? Or any of it? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if it's worth my time and attention and focus to be concerned about the changing face of America. It's like, well, was it ever static? Was it ever not was it ever not constantly changing? And that's another thing too. The progressives are taught to embrace the alien, the other, and change, and the right is taught no, MAGA, go back to an idealized past. So one of the fundamental dichotomies here is progressive future, traditional past. The MAGA movement is based on nostalgia. Oh, things were better when. And you see a lot of right-wingers do this. They'll post on Twitter a concert from the 70s, and they'll say, remember when things were better? Remember how things used to be? That's where the whole trad wife thing comes from. Pre-feminism. So when they say, like MAGA in general, Make America Great Again, they mean as in make it like it was before the changes, feminism, civil rights, uh, before these changes broke up what they considered to be what was an ideal. And I question if it even was. But if I'm not a Christian conservative patriot, why would I want to defend some archaic notion of like this perfected ideal when I don't think that's the case? And I do think that religion is essentially the psyop entertainment complex of the past, like old fake news. Ryler says, I've heard outlining our enslavement say things were better when everyone is Christian. Well, that's the part I disagree with. I mean, I'm really starting to question this. Like the idea that this was the de facto pristine way to live and this is like the perfect virtuous moral system. I just don't see that. In fact, religious people have been the worst people in the world that I've met. I mean, the only people I ever have problems with are religious nutcases, brainwashees who want to go on a witch hunt and demonize me. I had some person on BitChute saying that I was evil and not to listen to me. And I'm like, okay, so you must be a good guy. Like, I get you got a halo. I asked him, I said, are you a good guy? Are you holy or something? Like, oh, I'm a religious person, so I'm up here with God and I'm looking down on you. I'm like, I really doubt that. Like, if anything, I think religion takes away your moral high ground because it means you haven't done any research on its past. Okay, let's see here. And by the way, the progressives aren't anti-religious, or the modern scientific paradigm, despite its belief in science, it's not like it's atheistic. It's just a replacement religion. It's actually the biggest religion. Science has, uh, advanced everything about our lives in so many ways, and it gets credit for a lot of things, rightly so. But there's a point where science becomes science fiction. There's a point where journalism becomes fake news. And our concept of science, the way it's sold to the masses, is in a lot of ways like a religion. Like, I'm not against the scientific method. I'm not anti-science, just to be clear. But there are many things that have been dressed up as science that are actually religious. Like, for example, eschatology, doomsdays. We've been sold doomsdays. We've even been, reintroduced to the concept of angels under the guise of aliens. Space is a replacement heaven. So all of the old superstitions have been brought back, just under the guise of science. Stupid76 says, Tim, the show you do with Gemma is awesome. Yeah, we're going to talk again, too. Look, I don't care if people are nationalistic and religious. It's not I just don't care. I mean, everybody I know is religious for the most part. But I'm not going to say that it's not mind control. I'm not going to pretend like I believe any of it. And to be quite honest, the last couple of masses I attended were very eye-opening as to how these are likely ancient, like older than the religions. Like the beliefs that they carry are much older, from an older tradition. I went to a Catholic mass, and then I went to an OTO, an Order Templar Orientis Gnostic Catholic mass, and I compared the two. And this was last year. So the Gnostic Catholic mass is what the occultists actually practice. It's not a satanic mass. It's actually Catholic. But it's Catholic with a goddess. So replace the Holy Ghost with the goddess. It's the same thing. The structure is the same, but if you look at the symbolism, like if you were an alien, you wouldn't really see a difference between a Gnostic Catholic mass and a Catholic mass. One is exoteric, one is esoteric. So it seems like the mainstream version of Christianity is actually a stripped down exoteric version of the more pagan core. And I'm not saying they're sun worshipers. That's an oversimplification, but it's fundamentally accurate. I think if you want any insight into what religions actually are, Look at Serapis. This is like an admitted fake god. This is an admitted deity where they want to unify these disparate groups over this wide region. So what they do is they say, hey, let's take your Zeus, let's take your Osiris, and let's take your Dionysus. Let's mash them together in some Frankenstein god, and now we're all monotheists. So they merge it all together and they get everybody underneath this one god. And what I like about Serapis is that it's an admitted fake god. It's an admitted construct. And if they can fake a god, if the state can create a god to unify a group of people or large groups of people and have them worship it, do you think that's an anomaly? Like, that demonstrates they can do it. You don't think they would do it again? Or that they haven't done that since time immemorial? Maybe that's always been the case. Maybe every single god that the masses have ever worshipped has been a state creation. I mean, have you ever met one? Have you ever seen any evidence that any god of any religion was anything but a construct, a statue, a story? I mean, I'd be interested to know. And I'm not anti-spiritual. I mean, I'm not an atheist. I'm not a reductionist. I don't believe in the mechanistic reductionist version of things. If anything, I'm very pantheistic. I think the universe is participatory. But it doesn't involve some externalized God created by some government at some point. So I would say that Christianity is probably no different than any other religion in this regard. So they're co-opting whatever actually is there. So whatever you think of as God, or the ultimate cause of everything, it's not what has been packaged and sold to you in any of these loosh harvesting matrix pods that they call churches. I think all the churches are frauds. And if it's not true, let one of these gods show up and strike me with lightning. So far, I have not had any retribution for anything I've done or any of my blasphemies. And another thing that's often ignored is the astrotheological component, which to me, that is just proof it's a metascript, it's a story. Okay, let's see here. Going through your comments. Ryler says, Stalin understood the theory of evolution to be propaganda nonsense. Well, evolution is a science, and it shouldn't be looked at as a belief system. Like when someone says, I believe the science, it's like, well, no, it's something you have to know. But I don't think it's necessarily incompatible. Like if you were the maker of everything, why would you have to create the final product? Why wouldn't you allow it to evolve? I mean, it just seems like a pointless debate. Yeah, I'll be posting my last conversation with Emma on the BitChute platform. And look, we did talk about the J-Pill question. We did talk about it. Hey, what's up, caller? Yes, loud and clear. Just having a Saturn Day chat. What topic interests you today?
Well, I came across you on BitChute. I mean, I called you years ago. I called into your show when you were first on YouTube. But I came across you again on Gem that reminded me of you when I was watching a show.
Excellent. Well, thank you for reaching out again. And I'm going to be speaking with Gemma next Friday. And we are going to do some kind of 9/11 coverage.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Hey, I was listening to that show, and when you mentioned Alex 9, because I remember when he first came out, I knew something was up with that fucking, I don't want to swear. There was something up with it, because remember in the beginning of the show, he used to use the N-word like nothing in his song, and he was getting no flack for it?
Yes.
And I knew something was up with that creep.
Look,
but you knew more about him because you met him.
Yeah, I'll talk about Alex Stain in a minute here if you want to hear more, because it's very insightful.
Yeah,
He is 100%. Okay, Alex Stein is not only a plant, and I witnessed it, and someone I believe was a CIA agent, I believe, a producer, told me he was about to go viral before he did. And he showed up at two different fake school shootings as a crisis actor. Alex Stein went to Uvalde and he cried for the children. And that's when I called him up. I hit him up on Twitter and I said, "Hey, Alex."
I'm gonna hang up and listen because it's kind of breaking up.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for the call. Yeah. So Alex Stein took over for me when I was at Dark Matter. So I was a program manager for Dark Matter Digital Network. Dark Matter is the company that was owned by Art Bell when he left AM radio and he went independent. Now, he was brought in from his show called Conspiracy Castle, but he didn't really know anything about conspiracy theories. And I found that to be very peculiar that he was chosen for the gig. Well, his background was reality TV, and he told me that they faked everything. He said if it's on TV, it's fake. He said everything on Cheaters was fake. Well, he's then moved on to some show called Baby Truthers with Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole and Jeranism, a couple of other well-exposed shills. Then he goes on to Blaze TV, and he renounces his conspiracies, and he says, no, there's no flat earth. And he kind of basically grifted off the conspiracy movement. Then he got launched into the Blaze. From the Blaze, he then got deeper into politics. I think he even went to the White House. He's met Trump and stuff. But then I saw him at Uvalde, and he's crying for these fake dead kids. And I sent him a tweet, and I said in a DM, "Hey, Alex, fake dead kids' lives don't matter." And he blocked me. Then he shows up at another school shooting, and the cops are there, and he's calling the cops out for not doing enough. So he was making the rounds as a crisis actor. So how do you go from conspiracy theorist, hanging out or online with the likes of us, to now going to these school shootings and pretending like they're real? Why was he allowed to go? Well, it's because he's a citizen cop or something. He's got some kind of credentials where, essentially he's a crisis actor, but I think he's a Fed of some kind. I don't think he's a legitimate conspiracy theorist who just kind of moved. And he's also friends with Charlie Kirk. He claims to be a comedian, but some student at an event he was at said, "Hey, Alex, Charlie Kirk was right-wing most of his life, but I noticed that he leaned left before he died." And Alex did not laugh at that. He said it wasn't funny. I'm sorry, but that's objectively funny. He did, in fact, lean left and then he fell on the ground. That's a funny joke. Now, it wouldn't be funny if it was real, but knowing what you know, it was kind of funny. And even then, I mean, he acted hurt about it. Let's see here. What's up, Pippi Langstruff? Thanks for joining. Suzette Ann says, all religions created by the one world government. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the caller was low. That was their fault. I tried, but I got his point. So anyway, my point is, I call him Alex Stein because I know he's never going away. He's artificially viral. I don't know where he got his comedy credentials. Here's the thing. He told a joke, and this tells you he's a psyop actor. He said, "Congratulations to George Floyd. He's 4 years sober." So he makes this joke in like 2024, and Steve Jackson, the guy from the 2020 riots, when they started off after George Floyd's death, Steve Jackson, the basketball player, comes out and he says, "They killed my twin." Do you remember that? He killed my twin. Well, Alex Stein made jokes about George Floyd overdosing to death. So it was funny for him to do it. And then when somebody made fun of Charlie Kirk's death, it wasn't funny. And I'm like, that's not really fair. By the way, they both have the same birthday. Charlie Kirk and George Floyd, October 14th. That's right, stupid 7'6". During COVID, Alex Stein, he did this thing like it's an Erica Kirk. You know how Erica Kirk was like fake crying over the rubber body in the coffin? Alex Stein goes to a hospital and he fake cries. He's like, "Oh, my mom just died of COVID, or they killed her with the incubator." So like he's fake crying, and look, it was just fake. Then he goes on Infowars and he talks about how the doctors killed his mom, but he was like, he was joking around, and Alex is like, "Well, why don't you tell us about what radicalized you?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, they killed my mom." Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but it just didn't sell. But the guy is definitely a hoax. Apocalypse, yeah, that's another one. Greta Rittenhouse, yeah, Greta Thunberg and Kyle Rittenhouse both share the birthday of January 3rd, 2003. They have the same birthday. So they were both like brought out of the same vat. And it's like, well, think about this. George Floyd, martyr to the left. His death proves that the systemic white oppressor is still at large. Charlie Kirk dies, martyr for the right. His death is proof that Israel controls America and they had to silence him. So you have these like parallel martyrs. Greta and Kyle each are like poster children for their respective sides. Like Kyle represents, to the right wing what Greta represents to the left. They epitomize the values of each side, and they have the same birth dates. Very interesting. By the way, one of our listeners, and this was brought up recently, I think it's Penguin on a Raft. He works somewhere I think it's in Florida it might even be at a gun shop. I have to check. But anyway, he works with Kyle Rittenhouse. And he said, "Hey, is there anything you want me to ask Kyle?" And there's a lot of things I wanted to ask him a lot of things, but I know I'm not going to get the truth out of an actor. So I asked if he got any special powers from that brown recluse infected spider bite. And he said no, just for your record. Ibreek says, "What do you think Stain is related to? I've heard you mention before." Or who? Oh, look, I think that Alex Stein might be the illegitimate son of Roger Stone. I can't prove it, but there's something there. Can't prove it. But he did work for Clark Gable's grandson. Clark Gable's, a major Hollywood figure. So it's not like he came out of nowhere grassroots. And I just witnessed his meteoric rise to fame and how inorganic it was. Thoughts on SPLC? Oh, the Southern Poverty Law Center? Yeah, that's the group that does the hate maps. You see, this one of the agendas they have put forth here is what I call Disease X, where they're trying to create the perception that right-wing memes, right-wing ideas and beliefs lead to violence. That's why Musk has X, to platform this stuff. And if you look at Elon Musk's characters in various movies, like The Madness, Mountainhead, or The Naked Gun, you have these like Musk characters who are unleashing mind viruses that cause violence and mayhem. And this idea that right-wing memes cause violence has been building and building because they're probably going to use it as an excuse to lock down the internet like it's like a mind virus pandemic. And the SPLC is there to create the perception that this is true. And if you look at the people, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, look at who they cover. Like they do articles, they do hit pieces on people like Handsome Truth, Goyim TV, or Doobie the Wop. I don't know if you know who that is. Doobie the Wop was a rapper who then became the front for a group called the Goyim Defense League to oppose the ADL. So he's the guy who goes out there with like Nazi flags and stuff. Clearly an op. The guy is 100% controlled opposition. And I think the SPLC is basically an intelligence operation, and that all the people that they are warning us about are people they control. So you look at these like provocateurs who are being written about on these websites, like these are the enemies, we have to expose them. Yeah, it's all just controlled. Doesn't Stein kind of look like a Charlie? Yeah, these guys are all. I don't know if it's like a shallow gene pool at the higher echelon of the Illuminati pyramid, but Charlie Kirk, Alex Stein, they all look related for some reason. But they're friends too. And that's another thing, guilt by association. What are the odds that Charlie Kirk, lifelong crisis actor, reality TV show star, I mean, TP USA was just reality TV. Uh, what are the odds that he'd be friends with a former reality TV show guy? Eric Kirk, reality TV. Look, reality TV seems to be some kind of um, place where a lot of these agents get trained. I don't think they're just like, hey, let's recruit reality TV stars to do intel ops. I don't think that's the case. But there is this overlap here. And it has to do with the ability to act, to not just act like read memorized lines, but to ad lib. So, like, to be a polemicist, can you defend something you don't really believe in? Like, yeah, I could sit here if I wanted to. I could just put on a persona. I could probably defend every right wing talking point, a conservative talking point, pro Israel. I could do woke right, and I could probably bring up every single reason why we should be worried about whites being genocided. And then I could probably also do a progressive perspective. And I could argue from those perspectives because I know their structures. So when I look at someone like a Charlie Kirk, it's like, yeah, he's an actor and he understood the factions enough to defend these sides. So it's just basically a reality TV for all intents and purposes. Anufel says, so the Jersey Shore cast will be our future Congress people. Well, look, your president was one of the most successful reality TV show stars, the Apprentice. 13 seasons, top show. Like, no, it's not a coincidence when you look at the overlap between reality TV people becoming major world stage players. Some of the biggest names on the world stage now: Erica Kirk, reality TV; Donald Trump, reality TV. These are not coincidences. Stupid76 says, I was into HT years ago. Yeah, Handsome Truth or Goyim TV, the guy's a Fed. He's an operative. Or he's just brainwashed and a tool and has no clue. Which, it could be possible. It could be possible for a lot of the people around him. But no, I think he's directly paid by the SPLC or the ADL even. He might even work for the ADL. Like, he's controlled opposition to the ADL. But yes, we may as well consider that, yeah, the Jersey Shore cast are our future leaders. Apocalypse says, Handsome Truth is 100% an operative. Yeah, and I find it very questionable. We call him Handsome Truth. That's his chosen moniker. I go with Doobie the Wop because that's his embarrassing rap. There's a rap thing too. Stu Peters was a rapper. Candace Owens was an actress. And she was a backup dancer for a rapper. So what's with these failed entertainers getting into this business? Well, because they're getting into the biggest. I mean, to me, honestly, it's like crisis acting is the new Hollywood. I think that's like definitely true. That it might even be like an elite thing. Like, I'm not just a regular actor entertaining people. No, I'm actually helping to steer society. But I saw Handsome Truth hanging out with Jurassic Liars in a video once. And, I say guilt by association is valid on the world stage. On the world stage, it's a very small, like I said, it's a shallow gene pool, and it's a small group of people comparatively to the rest of us. And the fact that Erica Kirk was best friends with somebody who almost fake died. There was a fake shooting at a mall in Toronto, and one of her best friends almost fake died there. Thankfully, she didn't. But then she goes to Aurora, Colorado during the Batman shooting, the Joker shooter, James Holmes, and she got shot. So she actually did fake die over there. The fact that she's best friends with Erica Kirk ties Erica Kirk to a Christopher Nolan connected shooting psyop from years ago. Stupid76 says HT is funny. That's what got me into entertainment. Yeah, he tries he's a provocateur. He has tried comedy. He has done city council meetings and stuff. But see, these people are hired because they're entertainers. I think that's fundamentally it. I think it's easy to recruit people like that because that's what they need. They need influencers and entertainers. Again, our president is an entertainer. Erica Kirk, entertainer, beauty pageants. She's perfect to be vice president just based on that alone. Frugal says, Hegseth and Newsom are dead ringers. Apocalypse Thing Park says, the special effects for Grosskreuz's arm were the best in my opinion, way better than Charlie's neck. Yeah, it was very convincing. Gross arm. Because the next day he shows it. So after he gets his arm blasted off by Kyle Rittenhouse, you see him in a hospital the next night, and he shows off his arm with this big bandage on it. I was like, okay, the next day, oh, I got shot with an AR-15 in the bicep. My bicep exploded on camera, but now I'm just going to take a picture with it. Yeah, I never bought it. I mean, I couldn't explain it, but something had to have been up, and it had to have been squibbed. But I had a hard time trying to figure it out. And honestly, the story was great. I wanted to believe that a mob was burning down a city and some random kid from a neighboring state comes by to put it down because the police won't. And while he's there, just as an added bonus, he takes out a pedo, a strangler, and a burglar. And by the way, the strangler he shot in the lung, the guy with the skateboard, was best friends or good friends with Jacob Black. They started the whole riots over the police shooting a guy who was, I think, had a knife and he had just assaulted his girlfriend. The guy who was also, is it Jake? Yeah, that was his name. Let me pull this up. I believe Kamala Harris visited the guy in jail. I'm talking about Kenosha. Is Jacob Blake. Here it is. Okay, the shooting of Jacob Blake. Now, he didn't die, but he was injured. And this is what kicked off Kenosha. He had a knife in his hand when he opened his door from his SUV, and he was shot in the back 3 times. And he was tased. And that's why they rioted. They have to defend the guy, the crazy guy with the knife. If some crazy guy with the knife runs at some cops and they shoot him, you better fight for that guy's cause. Because that's what they do. Makes no sense. But anyway, I'm pretty sure Kamala Harris visited him at his hospital. Like, went to meet with him. Yeah, it's pretty horrible. I don't even read what he was doing at his girlfriend's house. The whole thing is just horrible. If real. But he was friends with one of the guys that Kyle shot. Kyle Rittenhouse is a construct. His character is largely based on Chris Kyle, like the greatest sniper ever. So Chris Kyle is known for stopping looters and rioters. So he's a sniper who goes across state lines during Hurricane Katrina, gets on the dome, on the Astrodome, and he shoots 30 looters. This was actually reported in the news. Chris Kyle, like imagine if some guy came out. This is how times have changed. This is how drastic the change has been. Kyle Rittenhouse shoots a pedo and a burglar, commie, and a strangler, abuser. He shoots 3 expendables. Like, we could do without those people. Who really cares, right? Well, apparently he went too far and the left is totally against him. And they were, like, I think they even affectionately, they affectionately called the predator that Kyle shot Jojo. And the shootings are kind of funny, ironic in a way, because he shoots the predator in the crotch. Remember he shot the guy was running at him with something, like blasted him through the pelvis, which to me is like perfect aim. He shoots the strangler in the lung, which kind of makes sense, and then shooting Gross arm in the bicep. I think that kind of makes sense because he's a burglar. But anyway, uh, Chris Kyle died in 2013, so he never had to answer for this. But just listen to this. As far as would this get a pass today? He was a United States Navy SEAL sniper. 4 tours in Iraq, 160 confirmed kills in combat. But during Hurricane Katrina, he drove to New Orleans after hearing of the looting. He got on top of the Louisiana Superdome and he shot 30 people. Like, imagine if Kyle shot 30 Black Lives Matter protesters. That wouldn't get a pass today. But this guy was lauded as a hero. He also killed 2 men at a gas station in 2009. They were trying to rob him. And the police thanked him for cleaning up the streets, he says. Anyway, he was later murdered, supposedly. But he was like this manufactured folk hero. And I think Chris Kyle was a proto Kyle Rittenhouse, crossing state lines, stopping the looters. Apocalypse Theme Park says conspiracy culture and wokeism are instruments to misdirect potential skeptics. Yeah, instead of becoming a skeptic of media itself and this mass mind control, they get you involved in the subplot to the main story. So conspiracy theorists are lost in subplots. Like, I'm not into world stage politics. And someone mentioned Gemma, so we were talking about this, and she asked me, like, she said you don't make a big deal or you don't talk about who's behind it. And I said, from my perspective, and this is how I think we should proceed anyway, we have to go based on evidence. And right now, the only question that we should be working on is, what is it? Because the people who don't know what it is are chasing the whodunit. Like, oh, these guys did it, so we have to be against it. We have to organize on this. But they don't even know what it is. And so you have people organizing their lives and their ideologies over fake things. I think it's premature to be treating this like a whodunit, seeking justice and identifying this particular bad group, especially because left and right have different versions of who is behind all the world's bad stuff. So I don't even go there yet. I don't think it's useful. I don't think it's accurate. I don't live in history. I don't live in his story, Big Brother's story. So why would I be following his heroes and opposing his villains? Like, these are characters. These are stories. I don't buy any of it. It's not my religion. Mainstream media is not my religion. And the meta scripture. So I say news is the New Testament. Just to give you an analogy here. History is to the Old Testament what news is to the New Testament. So you have the version of what came before creation, what brought us here. That's the Old Testament. That's history. The news is about the present day. The New Testament is the living Bible. It's about today. It's relevant now and tells us what's going to happen in the future. Well, that's what news does. So I call it the News Testament. But what is the News Testament? Like, what is the scripture? Well, the scripture is the fake stuff, what I call the meta script. It's the narrative that shapes our future. It's our historical narrative. So we have the News Testament from the meta scripture. Now, if I don't believe in that religion, if I'm not a believer in their scripture, the scripture of the day, then why would I be concerned with any of their mythological constructs. So I just don't believe in it. I'm a non-believer. And thinking about it even closer, I'm like, well, do I need to be respectful of people's religions? Well, I mean, I'm not like antagonistic about it. I'm not telling people what to think, but at the same time, I'm not gonna pretend like I'm not fundamentally opposed to mind control. And I think religion is mind control and media is mind control. It doesn't have to be. I mean, there is spirituality, there is journalism, but both of these have been co-opted by a monopoly. There is a worldview monopoly. The worldview monopoly that we're all a part of, that we all exist within, has supplanted religion anyway. It's replaced all the traditional religions, and it is the dominant worldview shaper. More people live in the worldview we get from government-sponsored fake news and entertainment than from any other religion. It is the dominant religious force. It has beat them all. Heaven, paradise, afterlife, all these various concepts of what come after or where we're going, these have been replaced by space, which is like this new utopian venture. The space program is like the heaven program. These things are synonymous because these are in fact replacements. So they gave us a heaven that even the atheist will believe in. That's a great point, Apocalypse theme park. If there's no real victims, there's no real crime, there's no guilty perps. Yeah, that's a fair statement. So I'm saying, like, if your oppression narrative is built on a bunch of lies, are you actually oppressed? And the last thing a self-defined, oppressed, aggrieved person wants to hear is they have nothing to be aggrieved about. They like to have somebody to blame. They actually build their life around it. The other day, we had a incel guy in our chat. I haven't uploaded that podcast. I don't know if I should, because we were spending so much time talking to this individual, a black pill incel, who's essentially making the claim that the reason why he doesn't have a wife and kids and a house is because he's being oppressed and he isn't looks maxed enough. And why is that? I think somehow he blames Israel for it, but I'm like, okay, you don't have to believe that. Your oppression is fake. I was talking to one person and like, well, who do you think did 9/11? I was like, Stanley Kubrick, John Carpenter, James Cameron, Tom Clancy, pretty much anybody who's anybody as far as like Hollywood directors, writers, any popular entertainers, plus the news media, plus the government. Like it was done by the PSYOP entertainment complex. It was a major production, a major simulation, and it becomes a major facet of our worldview. It put us into a new paradigm, the war on terror. Think about how much of the stuff that we know to be fake goes into the history books. Suzette Ann says, most, if not all, religions worship the media religion. Oh, yes. 2020 demonstrated this. They showed us. In 2020, we were shown that the TV, which is like a black cube, it's a black box, it's their religion of, it's the Saturnian matrix, very demiurgic, control over perception, false mind. Here's something too. I like the Gnostic concept because it's the idea of we are beings who are living in ignorance of our souls. We're designed to be NPCs, soulless beings in a material world. And the black screen that we see everywhere is the perfect emblem of Saturn and this realm, which is, again, materialistic, reductionist, and it does not require the existence of a higher self, a soul, continuity of being post-mortem. So it's very much the case that the media paradigm that we're given is just as much here, I think, to essentially remove the soul as influence our politics and our ideology. And it is, in fact, a religion. And all the other religions fall for it. Like in 2020, they shut down the churches, is what I'm saying. Well, they shut down the traditional churches, but you still have your home altar, which is what your TV screen is. It's essentially an altar. When you go into a movie theater, you're entering the black cube. And when I said News Testament, that's your black mirror, your phone, everyone's smartphone. That is, for all intents and purposes, that's your holy book. Because what is your holy book? Take your Bible or your Quran or whatever book you work from, Dianetics, whatever it is, whatever culture, part of, or religious tradition, your worldview is given to you in between the covers of that book. It's a collection of scripts, stories. So like, oh, this is where we came from. This is where we are. These are the bad guys. We're the good guys. This is how it ends. It's a complete worldview shaper. That's what holy books are. And the media, having replaced religion, has given you an effective replacement for a Bible. And it's your smartphone. Because that's where you frame your worldview. That's where you get your frame of reference. And that's what puts you on the same page as everybody else. I think it's a perfect analogy. And I think that's what the intended purpose is. Riley says the Japanese-American War was a complete media job. Stupid76 says the Twin Towers, that foundation was made into a black cube. Yeah, that's right. And I think it was on the 19th anniversary of 9/11. There was a 33-year-old who fell into the black cube reflecting pool thing. Do you remember that? We got to look into this stuff again soon. The towers fell into the waters of the abyss. Fascinating symbolism, because I think there's a strong connection here between, like there's a storyline. And I need to rewatch that last Francis Ford Coppola movie, because he made some statements about history. Megalopolis, make Rome great again. It's all about MAGA. I need to watch it again, because he said something that I think makes a lot of the stuff make more sense, because he's talking about how empires need to be brought down in the minds of the believers in it through a series of events over time. You can't just switch it off all at once. And so I look at the sinking of the Twin Towers as symbolic of the sinking of Atlantis, or the sinking Titanic, sinking of the West. It's this recurring theme. So you have the Titanic sinking, and the Titanic represents too big to fail, hubris. It's used as this metaphor. James Cameron, who put 9/11 predictive programming in Terminator 2, also put it into the Titanic, which came out in 1997. And in the Titanic, it splits into like twin towers. You got jumpers coming off of each one, and then it sinks. So there's this analogy here. It's like a perfect comparison if you look at the jumpers. So then you get, wait a minute here. So if the Titanic symbolizes the West sinking, but now it's foreshadowing the Twin Towers sinking, the World Trade Towers, those sinking must have some symbolic resonance to the sinking of the Titanic and the same basic meaning. Well, where do you think James Cameron was on September 11th? He was at the location where the Titanic is. He was underwater. He was filming something called Ghosts in the Abyss. So the person here had mentioned the towers fell into the waters of the abyss. Well, James Cameron was filming Ghosts in the Abyss at the sunken Titanic, which had been foreshadowed in his movie as representing the Twin Towers. Not a coincidence. And it doesn't end there. It goes further with this James Cameron connection. Like, how many times did he go down to visit the Titanic? The numbers and stuff are just absurd because they're super predictable. But then there was another element too, because his other movie, Terminator 2, has Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Who represents, you got JC, JC is the Savior. You know, like John Connor, Jesus Christ, Savior. And then, of course, he's trying to save us from the Terminator. And the Terminator character, Arnold Schwarzenegger character, essentially, what I think the Terminator represents is the other side, the dark side. So when the sun sets, the line where it sets, it's called the Terminator. You know, the light between light and dark. The sun god in the myths dies at sunset. So the Terminator kills him. The sunset represents the dismemberment of Osiris, etc. But I'm like, wait a minute here. So the Terminator, and the face of it is Schwarzenegger, the destroyer, right? The exterminator, the destroyer, the enemy there. And so on 9/11, around ground zero, and you can see this in some of the footage of the plane or of the tower actually exploding. You don't see the plane for some reason. But in some of the footage there, it's like a handheld camera, 8:46 a.m., you see billboards of Arnold Schwarzenegger overlooking ground zero. So think about that. The Terminator. Now, it's for a movie called Collateral Damage, and here's for the coincidence theorists out there. Collateral Damage had billboards around ground zero, Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger looking on. That movie was delayed because it had too many scenes that were reminiscent of a terror attack 9/11 style. So that was another movie that had programming in it for 9/11. And they actually had to change it because of the fact that it was too close. But put this in context. You have James Cameron in The Abyss on 9/11. His character, the Terminator, the face, the visage, is overlooking ground zero. Now let's go to Revelation 9/11. They had a king over them, the angel of the abyss, whose name is Abaddon or Apollyon, or the destroyer. So you have the destroyer overlooking the abyss. You have Cameron in the abyss. His character, who was the destroyer, is actually on the billboards represented at ground zero on 9/11. So there's a story being told here that's pretty consistent. But again, the sinking of the West, the sinking of the Titanic, the sinking of the Twin Towers, what we're seeing here, I think, is the controlled demolition of America, the controlled demolition of nationalism as we move into a one world system. I think that's like the meta script story here. And Megalopolis was about the fall of America. So the main character, Caesar Catalina, is based on Trump. He survives an assassination attempt, but New York gets 9/11. And by the way, in that movie, Megalopolis, they introduced the design authority who control time. Well, who controls time in this world? The PSYOP entertainment complex. The ones faking events, who write our history in advance, who bring us into this alt reality game, yeah, they control time. It's actually literally true. So Megalopolis is about the design authority, the time controllers, but at the end of the movie, New York gets 9/11. Now, what's interesting about that is the movie Megalopolis was actually being filmed more than 20 years before it was finally released. It was actually being filmed on 9/11 in New York that day. And Coppola said it would have been pointless to release the movie then because essentially it was about 9/11. It was about New York getting destroyed. So he decided to put a 20 plus year hold on it and then shoot it again later. But he still took some footage from 9/11 and put it in the movie. So if you watch the movie Megalopolis, it contains footage from September 11th, 2001. So that movie already tells you the guy's a meta scripter. He even had to change some of the lines because they were so close to 9/11. Like the whole thing of it is just, my point is, at the end of the movie, they replaced the Pledge of Allegiance to America with the Pledge of Allegiance to humanity. So it's this one world thing. And what did they do? after the sinking of the Twin Towers, the symbolic sinking of America. They erect a one world tower in its stead. And of course, it's 1,776 feet high, which you'll say, oh, that's America, it's patriotism. Well, no, 1776 references the pyramid on the dollar bill. It represents a number of things, but I think it actually correlates to the Tower of Babel, which is this one world system. And you can't have one world until you get rid of all the borders, which requires ubiquitous alien invasion. It requires humanity as one, which explains quite a lot about that movie and its subtextual meaning. All right, let me go through your comments again. The Twin Towers, that foundation was made into a black cube. Yeah, the black cube symbolism is built into this thing, and it's a fascinating thing to look at in and of itself. And I think you can correlate it with your smartphone. In fact, 2001 Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick, has this scene on the moon with the monolith that looks like Ground Zero. It's almost like perfect. And there's a scene in 2001 Space Odyssey where the space plane is entering the space station, which is made up of these two rings. And from that angle, it looks like Flight 175 hitting one of the towers. But the movie 2001 Space Odyssey shows the monolith and the sun and the moon above it. And I think that's when it's really been established here that the great work here, what they're doing has always been the merging of real and fake. Because that's what religion is. Is not religion merging fake with real? Getting everybody to believe in all these myths, putting everybody in this particular fictional universe that you control. I mean, liars control people, manipulators control people by building a system of lies around them to constrain their perspectives, and that's what religions do, and that's what media has done. They've just perfected it. Frugal Snowbird says the jumpers were microwaved like a Hot Pocket. So the 9/11 jumpers were probably filmed with dummies at some earlier point. Those were not viewed on the same day, by the way. You didn't see them on that day. But I think it's video composite overlay. Gelatin B probably had something to do with it. I think they were shot out with pneumatic cannons. There's this person I was debating with. He's like, well, I don't believe there were any planes. So it was mostly fake, but I think the jumpers were real. So I called him a 9/11 jumper truther because he didn't believe anybody died on 9/11 but the jumpers. But I was like, well, then how many? Name names. I try to get him into specifics because for weeks, he was trying to get me to concede that I'm wrong about nobody dying, that somebody had to have died, the jumpers died. And my best explanation for that is that the drills allowed them to create a closed movie set. There's no reason to think that anybody actually died. But that's always been like this assumption. Like, oh, of course they let some people die. And if you got to fight tooth and nails. With some of these people, you got to really fight tooth and nail to get them to say, okay, no one died. Like I got in this big argument with this one truther, and she was very shrill about it. And she's like, well, you can't say nobody died. I'm like, yeah, I just did. Nobody died. You can't say that. Well, then who died? The jumpers. And then I explained, well, no, these are dummies, pneumatic cannons. It's all just mass casualty simulation. And she's like, okay, well, somebody had to have died. Somebody might have died of a heart attack. Some homeless person. Like just grasping at straws. And that's when I realized, okay, the bloody guardrail, these corpse clutchers, these death clingers, what holds them back is they can't let go of there being actual deaths. And I think it's because when the psyop hit them, they were very emotional. And now you want to tell them, hey, you over-emoted. You've been overreacting for 2 decades. No one wants to be told that. It's like, oh, it was all just a farce. Suzette Ann says, I saw Megalopolis in the theater. Want to watch it again? Yeah, I want to look into it. Hopefully I can find it. Caesar Catalina, played by Adam Driver. And there's some fascinating overlaps here with other movies, and I'm glad. I mean, I think it's better for having waited. So it's actually now a mix of Dark City, The Matrix, and his original script. It's based on Trump. It has the assassination attempt, and it ends with this event that not only destroys New York, which again, it's Babylon. Say, make Rome great again, Megalon. So they were creating this comparison. And then America, or rather New York as Babylon, isn't a new concept. I think it's the biggest cathedral in the world, St. John the Divine, where on the pillars they have the Twin Towers getting bowled over by a tsunami. So the symbolism of New York being destroyed could easily represent this idea of Babylon falling, the Tower of Babel falling, or some kind of the empire falling. There's this symbolism in that movie. Again, Make Rome Great Again is a MAGA tie-in, but it's about how there's this catastrophe coming after which the empire ends and we move into a one world. Clockwork says, screw your freedoms. Oh yeah, the Terminator's like, put on a mask, screw your freedoms. He apologized for that. I don't know if I accept it. And Megalopolis was cluttered, busy, overwrought, hard to watch. It was gaudy, unsightly, incoherent, and jumbled. Like, I really don't think it's a great movie. But I had to watch it because of its propaganda value. Now, here's another interesting connection. The assassination attempt against Caesar Catalina, the Trump proxy, was orchestrated by the mayor, played by Giancarlo Esposito, the same guy who plays Edgar, the CEO of Vought in The Boys, the guy who is the antagonist to Homelander, who's based on Trump. So that other actor, Esposito, always plays a Barack Obama to the Trump. And in various movies, the dynamic is he's behind the assassination attempt. So when Homelander gets his brain ripped out at the end of season 5, guess who takes over? The Obama guy. And this dynamic where the Trump character being assassinated is being done by an Obama character, it manifests in several movies. Megalopolis is a prime example. The Boys, another example. Captain America Brave New World, Harrison Ford, as the president, gets shot at while at the podium, while his antagonist is played by the same actor. He plays Sidewinder. And then so there's a third example. Charlie Croker, Man in Full, based on Trump. His downfall is orchestrated by the mayor of Chicago. Different actor, but definitely an Obama proxy. So the people who think we're talking about coincidences have not looked at what I call the common denominators with the predictive programming proxies, where movie after movie that foreshadows a future event or person, if you look at the fictional counterpart, they contain the same elements movie after movie. That should not be. Or the same actors. That should not be. It should not be the case that the blonde femme fatale next to Charlie Kirkland when he gets shot in the neck watching the fight with Tyler the Executioner, it should not be the case that that same actress shows up as Vice President Elizabeth Kirk in a 2025 movie called Heads of State, where she tries to orchestrate the death of the president so she can take over. I mean, that's how Erica Kirk coded is that. But it's the same actress from Snake Eyes. Same actress, comparable role, and then the chef's kiss is she gets shot in the neck in the exact same place where Charlie was shot. G says you need to get the VC box, Tim. Watch anything, including Plus networking program. Yeah, that sounds like it'd be something I should probably look into. because this is our business. This is our job. This is our research. And I have been lamenting of late the fact that we're constantly paying for propaganda. Like, I'll pay to see a movie, but if that movie is going to contain psychological operation support, if it's going to condition me to be predisposed to fall for, react to, and believe in some future fake psychological warfare event, if I'm being propagandized, why should I be paying $20 a ticket? You should be paying me. I mean, honestly, they should be giving it away. We shouldn't have to pay for propaganda, but we do. Okay, let's see what else we have here. We barely got into. Oh, look, this guy, the fittest flurfer. This is the guy who muddies the waters to hide hyper-realistic masks. And this is like a big secret, but it's so big and it's so perfect that you can't really expose it. But hyper-realistic masks are so sophisticated that there are people on the world stage that we have only ever seen on TV or in public appearances who we've never seen behind the scenes. So we just assume they exist as presented. But the technology is so good as far as hyper-realistic masks that it's plausible that there are people who don't exist, who are just fictions, but they look real. Like Charlie Kirk, that guy, whoever that is, that could be a mask. I was looking at the actor who played Spider-Man, and his hair was basically like a mask from here up. Like, it's prosthetics are so good, the masks are so realistic that it's indistinguishable from the real thing. It's totally foolproof. So it's a very serious topic when you talk about deep faked reality. Like, it's not something they're just now doing because of AI. It's been done for 50, 60 years or longer. But instead of having serious discourse about the implications of deep fake tech, you get these goofballs like this Fed here, who looks like the son of George Holliday, the guy who filmed the Rodney King beating, by the way. And he's constantly putting random people together and he's saying, oh yeah, it's true. Chris Angel is actually Prince, or Prince is Chris Angel. It's like this guy, everybody's annoyed by him. I mean, nobody likes this guy's channel. And the guy's a psychopath who threatened to kill Jake the a-hole. He threatened to murder him. I would have called the FBI. It's like, let's see what's on this guy's laptop. Maybe he's wood chipper fodder. But no, he let it pass. The guy said he was drunk and he apologized. Not to Jake. He apologized to his subscribers. But anyway, this guy's a fool. And this image here of Candace Owens and Charlie Manson, not the same person. He's never been right about anything. And what I dislike about him the most is the waggy finger and the smug face. But anyway, that's how they contaminate these conversations. I did a breakdown of the predictive and concurrent stuff for Donald Trump. And look, the people who think this is all coincidence are ridiculous. You're mainstream. Like low effort, low info, mainstream, way behind. You're never going to figure it out. But look here. The Atlantic actually showed the exact part of Trump's ear that got clipped. Now, Laura Loomer talked about this, and she said, oh, it's because George Soros' son owns the magazine, and they're plotting to shoot him. What, they're plotting to shoot him on the tip of the ear? Come on. And here's the Homelander, the Trump proxy, his right face covered in blood. Season 4, Episode 8, they had to change the title because it was all about taking out the Homelander, which they finally did, and they ripped his brain out. Which kind of reminds me of JFK because his brain's missing. And Trump has been called brainless recently. And I think the the missing brain is all symbolic. But anyway, we were looking at all the various directors who created content that directly correlated to that event, and how the actors playing the Trump proxy all had highly significant birthdays. Like Mark Ruffalo, 11/22, JFK Death Day. Harrison Ford, 7/13, the day Trump was shot. And down the line, there are these consistent overlapping patterns. And if you're going to say these are just coincidences, you'd have to explain, how did one event have more than 7 or 8 directors perfectly replicate it and release content at that time? Because these are movies and films that would have been shot years before. So these coincidences are already stacking up. So it's unbelievable that these are random. These have to be engineered. But they all come out at the same time. So I was just asking the question, what's more likely? That the event was real and all these coincidences are random, or the event is staged and all of these directors are doing reinforcement propaganda? Like Occam's razor. What's more likely? That we're seeing propaganda on TV, or that this is some kind of mystery that we haven't solved yet? It's not a collective psychic phenomenon. It's a propaganda campaign. And it's used to reinforce or even just establish, but also just to tell us in advance the story of the soon to be presented fake stage, world stage event. I mean, it is case closed. And I have to emphasize it because we're not here trying to figure things out. We are documenting what we observe. We're making empirical observations. But what we're doing is we're articulating the structure itself. Like we actually are providing answers. So for the people who are like, oh, I think the Jays control the world, I'm like, that might be an oversimplification, a misrepresentation, and a red herring. Because we can actually identify many of the entities and individuals who are involved directly in the mind war. And it is not as simplistic as saying, oh, this group does it. Like, does what? These things are all fake. Clockwork says, will there be another edition of the deep fake book? You know, here's what I'll do. Because I am releasing the handbook for the recently deprogrammed 2nd edition on the 1st anniversary of the squibbing of Charlie Kirk. And I'm adding an appendix, which will be the Great Deconstruction Project, and I'm adding another series of chapters in there because so much has happened in the last year. And some of the things are just like, for example, the movie trailers before a movie and how these tend to reinforce the incoming subtext that's going to be in the movie. So like the propaganda analysis has advanced quite a lot in the last year. We have a lot of new terms and many more examples to explain the things we are talking about. But I think what I'll also do is I'll add deep faked into the appendix, because it's only like, I think I could probably condense it down because a lot of those articles that are in there made their way into the handbook. But I could probably put the deep faked into it, because the handbook for the recently deprogrammed is codifying all of our best ideas as a think tank. And we've been doing this for almost a decade. And I might have it released as a hardback, but that's next month. So that's one of my side projects. So you can look forward to that. My phone just died. I'm trying to get to your comments. I have a backup here. See how many people are in chat. We have 47 people here. Copaesthetic says, do we have a JLB fake skeptic auto hoax card? Yeah, we have revoked John LeBon's skeptic credentials. We have become increasingly skeptical about his skepticism. And it's nothing personal. You know, you're free to be wrong. That's fine. You can be mainstream. But if you're going to claim to be the world's greatest skeptic and all you show us is incredulity and dismissiveness. You don't get to be the standard bearer for skepticism. We are. The IPS think tank, we are the world's greatest skeptics because our skepticism isn't confined to the perspective of a fictional universe. We're also the only objectivists because objectivists believe the news is real, which is tantamount to a religion, contains myths and an unhealthy degree of mysticism. That all contradicts objectivism. So I'm not singling him out, but he did say that I am crazy. He says I've lost my mind. Okay, well, that to me is a challenge. If you're going to say I lost my mind, then it should be incumbent on you to explain or show me how. And I've said, look at the phenomenon of concurrent programming and explain to me how this could happen without it being engineered. But he will not address it. He'll reference people like, who's that one channel? He'll talk about people who are still blown away by predictive programming from 9/11. You know, like instances from 40 years ago. Like Hulk Hogan said something, like, who cares? That's ancient. We're talking about real-time, synchronized, mainstream news, fake events, and movies in the theaters. These things should not be synchronizable. It's impossible. It's one thing to draw from a large body of previous content and make correlations, and it makes it easier to dismiss it. Although when you look at the preponderance of it, no, we aren't cherry picking. But besides the point, the real-time convergence of fake events, drills, and movies, these things should not be synchronizable. But the reason why we're noticing this or we're aware of it is because we have recognized that the government, news media, and entertainment all work in tandem every day. It's not anomalous. It's structural fakery. But I've said, please look at concurrent programming and debunk it so I can go find another hobby. And he hasn't done it. So until he addresses concurrent programming as a skeptic, I don't consider him to be a skeptic. There's a difference between being skeptical and incredulous. The incredulous person says, I find that hard to believe from my position up here, so I'm going to dismiss it. That's setting yourself up as an authority. It's an appeal to your own authority. My incredulity is authoritative, so you don't have to believe that. Sorry, that doesn't work. Skeptics don't prejudge. They analyze the evidence. They get all the information, and they make a judgment at that point. So again, until he addresses concurrent programming, and I'll be happy to provide a list of 50 or 60 examples. But until he addresses that, I just don't consider him to be a skeptic. So do we need to make a PSYOP trading card for a fake skeptic? Yeah, I think that's appropriate. Angst G said they should be paying us to absorb the propaganda. Yeah, exactly. I think they should. I mean, they demonetize this channel. It's increasingly difficult to maintain what we're doing here because they are consistently flippant about their rules and their standards. I mean, we got through COVID okay. We only lost a few dozen channels. Medical misinformation was like this blanket excuse to just censor everybody. We had a little while there where the channel was growing. We had our memberships were going up. And then they said, nope, you're a replicant. But, I was talking to Gemma about this. It shouldn't matter because those of us with the off-world stage perspective constitute an entirely different demographic than alt media. We're not the same. And they can't sit with us. Like, we don't need their government manufactured opinions. We don't need their mind viruses. Like, we are effectively have quarantined against them. But there are enough of us that all we have to do is aggregate all the subscribers from all the different and all the randoms out there who figured this out. We just need to get them onto this separate platform. You don't belong in Trutherville. You're a captive. You're a captive audience to a establishment-controlled media ecosystem. If you want to get out of the Truman Show, Realville is the only place to go. There is nowhere else. And we are at war with Realville. Hank G says, do you think David Icke is legit? David Icke was part of a Green Party. He was in sports. He was a soccer player. And then his arthritis took him out of that. He got into media. And then he had some fall from grace from media when he came out as a New Ager. He started wearing turquoise and calling himself the Son of God. I think there's a few things about him, a lot about him I actually do like. But he's a J-pill. He's a standard conspiracy theorist. He doesn't know about the fake stuff. So he's not at our level of discernment. But he does have a lot of interesting things to say from a metaphysical perspective. I do think Tales from the Time Loop is a pretty decent model of this place. I generally agree with his overall ideas, but he's very much immersed in the media matrix and never really got out. Something else I like about him, though, is I think he does legitimately have some insights. Like, I think he does get some things right, but is he an operative? Okay, I have to end this now. Forgot I had visitors here. We will be continuing this conversation in Discord. Go to ips.monster. Appreciate all the comments, and I look forward to uploading the rest of the archives. I want to get some feedback on that last talk with Gemma. But yeah, just reach out.